One thing we can observe is that light comes from many different sources. The flames of these candles provide light. So do the electric lights that brighten our cities at night. Our most important source of light, however, is the sun, which illuminates our daylight hours. The sun points to another characteristic of light. Light is a form of energy. It can do work.
The energy of sunlight can be used directly by plants. Plants cannot live or grow without light. Plants use the energy of sunlight, along with carbon dioxide in the air and water in the soil, to make their own food. This process is called photosynthesis. Through photosynthesis, plants also produce oxygen. Because we need this oxygen to breathe, we could not live without plants and the energy of light.
There is a simple experiment that further demonstrates that light has energy. This experiment requires an inexpensive device called a radiometer. A radiometer has a glass bulb in which most of the air has been removed. In this airless space, there is a set of vanes. When light, such as sunlight, hits these vanes, they spin. If you block the light, the vanes stop spinning. Let light shine on them and they'll spin again. The light is doing work. It has energy.
What else can we say about light? Well, think for a moment about some things that many of you have probably noticed.
Have you ever looked up and seen beams of sunlight streaming from behind a cloud? Or walked through a woods and seen similar beams spreading out through the trees? We can think of such beams as consisting of countless lines of light. We call these imaginary lines rays, and it is often convenient to think of light as traveling in straight lines as rays.
Actually, the idea that light travels from one place to another raises an interesting point. It takes time to travel. For instance, it's taken several seconds for me to walk from that tree to where I am now. A car can travel much faster. On a highway, it might travel 60 miles in an hour. Light, however, travels much faster than anything else that we know of. Scientists have calculated that light travels at over 186,000 miles per second through air or space. 186,000 miles a second. That's so fast, it's hard to imagine.
Think of a jet plane that takes off from New York and flies over 3,000 miles across the country to Los Angeles. The average speed of the jet might be around 550 miles an hour. At this speed, it would take about 6 hours to complete the trip. Now let's imagine light making the same journey. At 186,000 miles a second, light could travel from New York to Los Angeles and back again over 30 times in 1 second. Light travels so fast that light from the sun, which is more than 93 million miles away, reaches us here on Earth in only 8 minutes. The stars that we see in the sky at night, however, are so far away that it takes over 4 years for the light from the closest star to reach Earth. And many stars are much farther away. Even at the incredibly fast speed of light, it takes thousands and even millions of years for the light of some of these stars to reach us. But let's leave the stars and try to observe some other characteristics of light, things that can be observed closer to home, in our own backyards and houses. One thing we might observe is that light responds differently to different types of materials. Take, for example, the glass of a door or window. Light can easily pass through this glass. Anything through which you can easily and clearly see is called transparent. Water is another example of a material that is transparent, and so is air.
On the other hand, anything that allows no light to pass through is called opaque. This stone wall is opaque. So is a tree. You can't see through anything that is opaque. Since something opaque blocks light, a shadow often results. Shadows are the absence of light. This shadow has formed because my hand is blocking sunlight from reaching the chair. When light hits something opaque, like a tree or my hand, what happens to it? Some of the light is absorbed, but much of it bounces back or reflects. The fact that light reflects from the surface of opaque objects is an important characteristic of light. Let's try and see why.
Things that give off their own light are said to be luminous. The sun is luminous. So are electric lights. Things that are luminous are direct sources of light. But most things are not luminous. If you turn off an electric light at night, the room becomes dark. You can't see anything because the other things in the room don't provide their own light. But turn the light back on, and once again, all the things in the room become visible because the light from the bulb bounces off them. The books, people, and everything else in the room are revealed through reflected light. One of the most striking examples of reflected light is the moon, which even in the middle of the night can dramatically light up a landscape. Many people think that the moon is luminous, that it is a direct source of light. But this is not true. The moon is not a direct source of light. So, where does this light come from? The answer is the sun. Light from the sun, which at night is behind the earth where we can't see it, bounces or reflects off the moon and back to the earth. In other words, the pale and often eerie moonlight we see is really reflected sunlight. In the same way, we can see a book or magazine at night because of the reflected light from a lamp. Rays of light from the lamp bounce off the page back to our eyes. But how light reflects depends on what kind of surface it hits. The page of a magazine, for example, may seem smooth and flat. But if we were to zoom in and look at it very closely, it would look different. Magnified many times, the seemingly smooth surface of the page displays many very small bumps. Each ray of light from the electric bulb strikes a part of this rough, uneven surface, and the reflected rays travel in many different directions. Now let's see what happens when light strikes a very smooth surface. The rays hit the surface, then they all bounce off in the same direction. When light rays reflect from a smooth surface in such a regular and orderly way, they form a mirror image that you can see. You can see such reflections in many places, such as the glass of buildings,
and on the smooth surface of water in a pond, lake, or pool. Earlier, we determined that rays of light seem to travel in straight lines. When rays reflect, they change directions, but continue to travel in straight lines. There are times, however, where light does not travel in a straight line, but bends.
It's easy to prove for yourself that light bends. Get a cup. Put a coin in the bottom of the cup. Now position the cup so that you can see the coin. And then slowly move the cup back until the coin is just out of sight. Stay perfectly still in this position. Now have someone else slowly pour water into the cup. Even though you haven't moved, you can see the coin again. Magic? No, let's take another look at what happened. When there is no water in the cup, rays of light reflecting from the coin are traveling in straight lines. But because of the cup's position, none of these rays can reach your eyes. As a result, you can't see the coin. But light can bend when it goes from one kind of transparent material to another. After water has been added to the cup, light rays travel in straight lines through the water, which is transparent. But when the light rays enter the air, which is also transparent, they bend. In this way, some of the rays are able to reach your eyes, letting you see the coin. This bending of light is called refraction. You can often see some strange effects caused by the refraction or bending of light. For example, if you put a spoon into a glass of water, the spoon seems to bend or even break into two pieces. This is because rays of light reflecting from the part of the spoon that is in the water bend or refract as they leave the water and enter the air. For similar reasons, things that are underwater look closer to the surface than they really are. The light rays reflected from something underwater refract or bend when they reach the surface. We can control the refraction of light for useful purposes with lenses, such as the lens of this magnifying glass. A lens is a specially shaped piece of glass or other transparent material. A magnifying lens is convex, which means that it's thicker in the middle than on the edges. A convex lens refracts parallel rays of light in such a way that they come together. This can make the image seen through the lens appear larger. Among their other uses, convex lenses are used in many telescopes to help us see things that are at a distance. Another type of lens, the concave lens, is thicker on the edges than the middle. When rays of light pass through a concave lens, they bend outwards. Concave lenses are used along with convex lenses in binoculars, and both concave and convex lenses are used by themselves in different kinds of eyeglasses to help people see more clearly.
Even though our eyes may sometimes need help, the most important lenses are those that are in our eyes themselves. Without these lenses, we couldn't see anything at all. How does the eye work? How is it possible, for example, for us to see these flowers?
A flower reflects rays of light, in this case from the sun. When these reflected rays reach a person's eye, they pass through a curved, clear covering, the cornea. The cornea bends these light rays. The rays bend again as they go through the lens of the eye. The lens is located right behind the pupil, the eye's round opening. The lens focuses the light rays so that they form an image at the back of the eye on a kind of screen called the retina. Because of the way the light rays have been bent, the image on the retina is upside down.
Obviously, it would be very inconvenient if everything we saw appeared upside down. Now that's better. Fortunately, there is a way that this problem is taken care of.
Messages about the image formed on the retina are sent to the brain, which interprets the image as being right side up.
This partly explains how we see these flowers. But why are they red flowers? Why aren't they purple or green or blue? For that matter, why do any of the things around us appear to have the colors they do? Well, color, too, is very much connected with light.
One of the first people to try to understand how light and color are connected was Sir Isaac Newton, an English scientist who lived over 300 years ago. Newton conducted some experiments with light using a prism. A prism is made of glass or some other transparent material with faces shaped like a triangle. Prisms can be bought at many toy or hobby stores. Let's see what happens when white light, such as a beam of sunlight, shines through a prism. When white light enters a prism, it bends or refracts, and it bends again when it leaves. But white light is actually made up of different colors, and these colors refract by slightly different amounts so that they separate. Red light bends the least, then orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and finally violet, which bends the most. When Newton saw this band of colors, he called the band the spectrum. You can see the colors of the spectrum in rainbows. Rainbows are formed when sunlight shines on raindrops in the air. These drops act like prisms. They bend and separate the colors that make up the white light of sunlight. Now back to the flowers. If white light is made up of all the colors of the spectrum, why do we see these flowers as red? Well, the answer is that when the white light of the sun strikes the flowers absorb or take in most of the colors of the spectrum. Only the red portion of the light is reflected to our eyes. Other flowers appear yellow because they reflect only the yellow part of the spectrum, absorbing everything else.
Why are these leaves green? Because they absorb red, blue, and all the other colors except for green, which they reflect. This black notebook is a special case. It absorbs all the different colors so that no color is reflected, while white light is made up of every color in the spectrum. Black is really the